Was there anything from last meeting or the 3 topics? We talked about club culture. Let's hold off on skill acquisition so everybody can see his presentation. And talk about coach development. Was there anything that you guys want to dive in, or do we want to continue maybe with this body contact discussion?
I'm just curious, Joe, where USA Hockey's going with it. I've heard obviously a couple different alternatives, and I'm just kind of curious what the kind of the discussions are at the national level.
Okay, so let's do it. Here. So can everyone see that document that's up?
Yep, I can see it.
Yep.
I can't hear you guys. Can everybody see that document?
Yep.
So what Youth Council has tasked the Youth Council and ADM is, and I definitely want your feedback on this, is basically this: when we have our winter meetings, you're going down, and we have floated around a lot of different ideas, but we can't drill down on anything succinct on body contact right now. There's too many moving pieces, there's too many thoughts, and we can't gain any momentum. So what we're doing is we broke it down into 5 different areas. And you can see the groups: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're going to go into smaller groups at winter meeting, and we're just going to try to present the pros and cons of each one, then try to build consensus within Youth Council, and then make some proposals to the body here at winter meetings. Before we get into it, though, I just want to preface, the CDC came out, and their official recommendation for body contact, full body checking. They've done studies. They've looked at the size of kids, reaction time of kids, muscular development of kids, brain development of kids, and looking at all sports: football, soccer, lacrosse, wrestling, basketball, hockey, full body checking or tackling. They're putting their recommendation at 15U and up. So we're close. We're at 14. But why don't you guys look through those things? Let's throw it out, general discussion. One is keep the rule as it is. Increase education, training, and enforcement. Don't do anything. You guys have any thoughts on that?
I think it needs to be changed.
Okay. And Paul, you're rooted in safety, and go ahead.
Yeah, I know. I think just for me, it's just seeing what is youth sports for. And obviously I played college and pro and coached junior hockey, and see the need for higher level players to understand how to separate guys from the puck and play at that next level. But I just see at these lower Bantam levels, it's just, to me, it's the size disparity. It's dangerous, and just the skill level is so low that they can't even attempt to even execute a real clean body check because of their skating skills, their stick position, their, body position, all that stuff is not great. So they're just running around and trying to hit guys. And some teams don't do that, but also, obviously it comes from the leadership of the coach, right? How does the leader of the team coach the kids, and how do they want to play? And I've just seen some bad things at those levels that just, to me, doesn't make sense. If the kid's going out there and wants to play hockey and enjoy the game and develop his skills, I don't see it necessarily needed at that level.
Yeah.
I also think it places a disadvantage on the late biological developing kid. I mean, the kid has a lot of skill, but hasn't hit his growth spurt. And you look at some of these select camps around the country, and most of these kids that are coming out of the Bantam development camps, the 14U or even the 15U, these are the big kids. These are the early biological age kids that are out there. They're big, they can hit, and the other kids that kind of tend to, I think to some extent, we're missing the boat on some of these smaller kids that have skill, but either they're intimidated or they're being overlooked based on biology. So I think taking a look at that at the checking at the 14U level is going to put the advantage back to some of these late bloomers.
Or early bloomers.
Oh, give an advantage back to the late bloomers.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, the early biological kids are the ones with the advantage right now.
Great point. Yeah.
I get a chuckle because a lot of programs want us to do checking clinics, and you go out there with their Bantams, and they can't even activate an outside edge.
I think the rule number one, if you keep it as is, how do you quality control that throughout all the associations from a USA Hockey standpoint? So if I bring a 14U team up to another team over, let's say Snow King, and Snow King has a road coach that hasn't taught any body checking or any specific techniques on how to do it, then that's going to be not a very good experience for both teams.
Well, so keep it as it is, Jody. That's what we're doing right now.
Yeah, I want to 14U checking. The size difference there's such a big discrepancy, and also the quality control and being able to keep coaches, have them teach it correctly, enforce it, and educate them correctly. It's going to be too hard to manage. So you have, I think, with that compounded with the size difference, that I'm with you guys. I'm with taking it out. It's too early for that stuff. We're still building hockey players.
When I coached Bantams the last 2 years, the first year Bantams at the end of the year, everybody had at least one concussion and one broken bone on their team.
Jeez.
Because of the size.
Joe,
Go ahead, Del.
remember at that Western Regional, I forget if it was Flint or somebody, right? They asked, like, hey, who had a concussion? And would we have like 200 kids? Over half of them stood up.
Oh, it was 3/4.
Yeah, and then they had, some of them had multiple. Like, I remember us all taking a step back and, being like, holy shit, they've only been hit in 1 year.
I think that's the answer right there, isn't it? Like, that's pretty crazy.
Didn't he also call out there was a kid there that was 220 or 230 pounds? And there also was a kid there that was like 110?
Yes.
Holy shit. And that's, best kids in the Western United States.
So,
Reminder, Jody and Dell. That's right.
so Joe, how do they go about, like, let's say there is a big consensus by all the leaders. How do you unveil that? As I know 12U was so difficult, around the country. Is it something you think is an easier battle this time, or is it going to be just brutal to get put through?
Well, I think we learned on how we roll things out. And I've heard discussion of getting a lot of the former NHLers on board with it. Who was the one NHL guy that said there should – it was Eric Lindros. Said there should be checking in hockey.
Yeah.
You get those guys and you send that message. And then the biggest piece of information here is the CDC. It's science, and it's not science, but it's a fact. I mean, it's the well-being of the kid, and it's the right thing to do. And you know what? We'll push back for 2 years, but in the end, every time we make decisions about the kids, good things usually happen. But we'll get to more of that too, Doug, because there is going to be a part of you guys are now really making hockey soft. And I think I'm going to be prepared for. Let's go to number 2. Keep checking at 14U, but update checking rule 2. Blow-up hits, remove intimidating hits, no defenseless player. What Quebec does, we can get in that later. They basically want their skates moving in the same direction, and you have to make a play on the puck, stick on stick. And allow 6-month play downs like National Rugby. So if you have a 6-month overlap window, then kids can choose up or down based on their size. Any thoughts there?
So you can have a kid that's smaller at 14U play 12U?
So if you're in the first 3 months or last 3 months of the season, or a birth year, you can play up or down based on size. That's what they do in rugby.
Interesting.
If I'm born in November and I'm a late bloomer, late mature, I can play down.
That's an actually interesting rule. What's your guys' take on that one?
This is kind of what Dell ran at the 14 camp.
What's that?
Right, Dell?
Well, we tried at the 14 camp to have the kids' skates always pointed in the right direction or in the same direction, but it did get a little muddy on like the one-on-one situation. My only concern with like when we say remove big blow up, remove intimidating, then we're having the referees enforce the behavior, right? Because the kid already got blown up. And then, you know what I mean? So, like, I don't know. I think you almost have to get rid of it or leave it. I think if you try to get rid of an intimidating hit or big blow-up hit, then we're only enforcing it after the fact. You know, I almost think, especially like what we were saying before at the lower levels, if you just get rid of it, then get rid of it. I think it just makes it easier than having too many options.
Joe, have they ever thought about just simplifying it and having the same rules as they have for the girls' game? You watch, you know, we've got our tier 2, 19U, 16U teams up here. They're physical hockey games, but they don't have the big blow-up hits. There's the shoulder-to-shoulder hits. I mean, it's really good physical hockey that's not causing concussions, not causing those injuries, those jarring hits, the running at each other, the face-to-face blows. I guess it just makes sense. It seems like try to reinvent something that you already have in place at a level for the girls, to me, makes sense. Why wouldn't that just transfer over to the boys, the same rule book that we're using for girls hockey? I mean, the officials are able to make that transition. They ref high school games, they come to the girls games, and it's a different game, but it's actually, to me, it's a lot more fun to watch. And I think that even the same with the Olympics. You watch the Olympic women, and I enjoyed watching the Olympic women more than I did watching the men's, frankly.
So Sean, let me stop you there for a second. I think the option number 2 is saying that.
Okay.
But what is the rule with girls? I'm not aware of it. So how do they phrase it, and what's the terminology there?
Well, technically there's no checking, but they allow for physical contact. So, you know, you're going for a puck battle and girls go shoulder to shoulder. That's allowed. And so there's physical play, but if a girl's coming across a blue line and a defenseman steps up and drops her shoulder in her chest, obviously that's going to be called as a check. So there's contact, there's body contact, there's not checking. And that's, I think, the difference in terms of how the officials, they allow contact, they don't allow the checking. And that's basically the concept of removing the player from the puck as opposed to rubbing a player off or using your body to gain position on a play. So there's contact, but again, you don't have the big blow-up hits.
Right. Anybody else want girls see that? So, what would your take on that be compared to getting rid of it?
No, I think that I like that a lot. I think we just see at the highest level of the NHL, like what's happening at the NHL level now. Like, look at all the discipline stuff that's happening with just, you know, checks that were good checks 10 years ago, right? And look at some of the research on the football hits and some of the schools not doing tackling drills anymore. Like, it's all going that direction. Why not embrace how good of a product we have by focusing on the speed and the skill and, you know, the aggressiveness and the contact and the body positioning, but just removing those dangerous checks that aren't needed. That it just doesn't make sense. So I like that. Those are all good points about the women's game. And, you know, if we still think depending on how long this takes, but the NCAA, junior hockey NCAA, and the, you know, AHL, NHL, is that if there's still going to be full on body checking, then I do think there is some merit to prepare our kids at the highest levels of the, you know, maybe the 16 AAAs, that kind of levels, 18 AAAs, to introduce that next step.
Right.
I'll interject a little bit, and I think, Paul, one of the comments you made about what's going on at the highest level, I think that is going to permeate, given a little more time. It's going to permeate down all the way through to just how the game is going to be played differently once everybody starts to, again, familiarize themselves with how the game's actually being played. And, for example, because of the way the game's played in the NHL right now, which is for a lot of our adult hockey players here in Dallas is really the only reference to the game that they have outside of, maybe your transplant player that's played here before. Because of the change in the way the game's played at the National Hockey League level, which is, like I said, 90% exposure to our adults, our adult incidences and our adult penalties over the last 2 seasons have significantly dropped. And it's all to do with the image of what our game is being portrayed now at that high level. And I'm just using that as a little bit of an example to where I really believe that if you get to, like Sean alluded to, the way that the women's game is played, I think that by the time these kids do get to the college and to the National Hockey League or the junior level where you have a more experienced official, they're already playing the brand or the style of hockey that you're going to want them to play without even mandating more guidelines. And so I really think that the biggest influence on all of this is going to be what's going on at the National Hockey League. And given a little bit more time, we're going to see it start to turn.
That's good stuff, Dwight. I agree with Dwight and Paul. Like we go and watch our 14U AA championships, and those look significantly different than they did 3 or 4 years ago. The dump and chase, drive guys through the wall, that type of stuff. There's nothing. We haven't done studies on it, but just to the eye, the game looks like it's changed. I think we're starting to see a little bit of change in behavior on that. Great stuff, you guys. And I'm writing notes too, and I'm going to share a lot of this with Youth Council. Number 3, separate 14U to 2 single birth years. Jody, what does that do to your program? Could you do that?
No, we just don't have the numbers to be able to compete at those levels. I mean, right now, for example, our 14U rep squad has, half the team is 13s, half are 14s. And so if we take that, then we're grabbing kids from our 14U house league that have been playing house their whole life, haven't been in a checking environment their whole life, or even much of a body contact environment their whole life. And you'll be putting them in an area where they're going to be basically a sink or swim, or like you guys were saying, talking about some of those parents just don't want that contact for their kids, or some of the kids just don't want to play a contact hockey game. They want to go from, non-contact all the way up into adult non-contact. And that's their hockey career. That's their hockey path. So, we'd be exposing kids to that environment, which I would be scared for some of them, quite frankly. So.
Yeah, our numbers here wouldn't support that either, Joe. And, it would be a disaster for our mountain towns all the way around. I still don't think that even solves the issue of even between 13 and 14, that biological gap is huge. I mean, the early boomers, you can get some 13-year-olds that are massive and some 14-year-olds that are still, tiny. It wouldn't work for us from a numbers wise, and trying to separate that level.
I think Sean's correct too regarding the size difference. We have 13s that are giants, and we have 14s that are small. So I don't think we're fixing the problem.
Yeah.
I think you.
How about Matt? How's that looking, Kalamazoo? Did Matt get off?
Yeah, no, I mean, we could support it number-wise, but I agree with the other comments. It really doesn't matter. I mean, our 13Us, most of the kids are bigger than the 14Us on some teams. So, yeah, separating into single birth years, I don't think is feasible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 4, remove body checking from all levels. Is that what you're talking about, Paul?
Well, I do like the idea of, playing the game like the women's game at the highest levels. And then, like I said, I still think there may be some room that higher level AAA players to be able to have kind of the next step or progression of the game, if that's what the junior, NCAA and the pro leagues are going to look like still. So I think not having that may not matter, but I also think it might be a good idea to introduce that at the highest levels of youth hockey.
Let me throw this by you guys. Now think when I say this, and then I want to hear your reaction to this. And we've had this discussion. What if USA Hockey says this? Ice hockey is no check from mites to adults. However, at 14 or 15U hockey, you are allowed to opt in and get an exemption for your league to be checking. So what we're doing is we're just flipping the thought on it. So there's no body contact unless the Tier 1 Elite League or the NAPL or whatever league wants it, then they have to write in a request to become a full check body contact league. What does that do to your parents? How do you guys feel about that?
So you're turning checking basically into a tiering? Like we have a tier one only checking predominantly would be asking for it. Would be my guess.
So you're basically turning checking into an option for those that want it. And then you'd have to write in a request. So maybe it's just a tournament.
Who's the judge?
Maybe it's
Who's judging this guy gets it, this guy doesn't?
I think USA Hockey.
What's the criteria?
I don't know. I'm just more talking about the philosophically, the thought behind.
I think there needs to be a distinction between checking body contact, and I guess I laughed. We ran a drill with our 6 and under mites last week where they, playing handball, they had to push the soccer ball on the ice. They had to bend down, get low, and I mean it was like bumper cars out there. These kids were crashing into each other, and they loved it. It wasn't checking; it was body contact, and a lot of it was kind of dispelling their fears. And so, I mean, you look at that, there's going to be contact in hockey, even at the 6 and under, 8 and under level when you're running drills. So are we talking contact or are we talking checking? I mean, angling a player out of the play by using your body, is that causing the concussion, or is it stepping up and dropping your shoulder and giving the proverbial booger shot to the guy where he's blowing snot out of his nose when you hit him, right? So, I mean, I guess I'd like to see a distinction between having contact in the game, and that's even at the younger levels, letting these kids bump a little bit as opposed to sterilizing the game and saying there's no contact versus checking. And what does that mean? So defining those terms, I think, is key.
Yeah, I think that's the best point. Like, I think if you, Joe, what you said earlier about saying it's non-check, I think that would not go over well. I think embracing what the game is, and like the last gentleman said about the body contact and defining it, and really embracing the speed and the aggressiveness of the game and how physical it is. All we're doing is we're removing the dangerous hits and the dangerous body checks. So it's really embracing the contact of the game, the speed of the game, and play that up and get NHLers behind it. And I think that's the better way to go.
Yeah.
So, Paul, are you advocating for number 2?
Say that again.
Hey, Paul, are you advocating for number 2 then? Remove the big hits, remove intimidating hits, but keep contact going?
Well, once again, right? Define it, right? I think the game is always going to have contact, right? There at the 8U level, there's contact, right? There's kids battling for pucks. There's shoulder battles, and so I think we embrace that. I think we show from the mountaintops about the contact of the game, the physical play of the game, from the 8U level to the U.S. Women's Olympic level, right? There's contact. We just want to remove the stupidity of the body checking. In my opinion, is the guys running around hitting guys, boarding guys, high hits. Even these, even the big, huge open ice hits are not necessary. I think that's what I'm talking about, is removing that stuff, and where you angle, you get better position, and you focus on the skill sets of skating, angling, hockey awareness, and using your body the right way to gain possession.
I think, hey, Joe, I think that we took checking out of all of our rec leagues many years ago. We have a pretty big rec league in the Seattle area, and we took checking out, and basically it was because of the disparity in skating. So it seems like the better the skaters are, it seems like the more safer it is. Is that a decent comment or no?
I think it's a great point because my son plays on a 15 Tier 1 team, and they're lousy. And they're probably 60 through 80 on ranking. And when they play a top 20 team, it's dangerous. Now when they play 40 plays 45, they're all kind of similar kids. It makes sense. But my point is that when you get, I guess, similar type players, I think the chance for injury is going to be lower because everyone's on the same capability, right? It's what you're saying. But you get disparity, and you get a freshman playing against a senior in high school hockey, or you get a kid less experienced playing against a well-oiled AAA kid. It's dangerous. I think the danger increases, and we've talked about that. Let me ask you guys this. The big thing that we've seen too is, we don't coach checking because you can't check until you're 14. And what I'm hearing you guys say is, no, 8U, what Sean said, there's a lot of body contact in practice. Are your coaches and are your age coordinators teaching angling, stick position, body contact at the 8U, 10U, 12U level? And I want to hear you guys talk on that. And the mentality, we had a report today that there's a coach out east that says every kid on his team has to have 4 hits, and his biggest players have to have game separation hits, whatever that means. Are you guys as directors, teaching that and instilling proper, safety with your coaches as directors?
Joe, here in Aspen, we've got the football pads where our coaches, we do it at the squirt level, where, we teach a kid, he's going to get hit against the boards, keeping your head up, keeping your arm inside so you don't get the chicken wing, your elbow sticking way out, keeping your feet moving. And so you have these kids come through, and the coaches give them a bump against the boards and teach them, just that you're going to get bumped, you're going to have contact, and getting them used to that at the 10 and under level. And we work that into our curriculum.
We do a lot of it down at 8U with even just like proper puck retrieval off the wall. So you're never going in at a dangerous angle. And then right from 8U, we're teaching them also how to angle. Try to build it into all our skills sessions, all about angling, stick on puck, hands down, 2 hands, little things like that, to give them that foundation before they get older, so they're not, on the other side of it, putting themselves in a dangerous position either by improperly being around the wall or taking that bad angle.
Yeah.
The 12U thing that Kevin McLaughlin did years ago, pretty much for me summed it up. It was incidental contact. You can do whatever you want. You can take the puck, you go hard for the puck. There's lots of contact, right? So, yeah. I mean,
are you training your kids to give and take body contact at the 10U, 12U ages? And are your coaches coaching it?
Yes.
Yes.
And they're so much more familiar with contact now with 8U cross ice, 10U half ice. And then by the time they get to 12U full ice, they've been in such a tight environment, that a lot of it they've picked up on their own, if you will, but they still do. But then, of course, you want to get them ready. We have checking clinics and such, but we don't start really. We're worried about safety at 14U when it really gets big, I guess. And I know what you're saying. You got to start teaching that at a younger age, right?
Yeah. How many guys, and I know Jody's done it, how many guys do off-ice body contact stuff with their kids? And if so, when do you do it? At what age?
We've done it at 12U and up.
And what does it look like, Paul?
It's just we do some of the USA Hockey, some of those USA Hockey videos. The contact and the pushing and the pulling, that kind of stuff. And then for on the ice, we don't necessarily, like, for on the ice for like the 8Us, we don't necessarily teach like contact and stick position per se, but we create an environment that allows for that. So there's a lot of battles and races and that kind of stuff, and picking up pucks off puck retrieval stuff. And then once we get to like the 10U, 12U, that's when we really get more into the, the angling, and then, taking away the hands, stick on puck, that kind of stuff. And some a little bit in the 10U, then it really ramps up in the 12U level.
Yeah. Matt, how about you on Kalamazoo? What's your body contact program look like?
So in the fall, we'll do off ice for the 10s, 12s, and 14s. And then we do 3 successive weeks of skill development practices, all committed to body contact, confidence, gapping, angling, positioning, and incorporate that with the off ice as well. And that's for our travel and house B kids only. And then the 8Us, they just get it in the random, or just as part of the practice sessions. We encourage them to bump in the body contact, utilize the rings a lot because that encourages the contact. So,
yeah. Let's go to number 5. And let's just go to the one part. I think Paul brought it up. Just remove body checking from USA Youth except national bound Tier 1 and Tier 2 teams. What's the discussion on that?
I think we're trying, in at least Washington State, I think we're pretty much doing that right now, except for B squads. B squads are also included in that, the non-nationally bound traveling squads.
So say it, Jody, what are you guys doing?
We basically do the same thing. Everybody can check. Like all in-house programs can't check. But as far as if you're Tier 1, Tier 2, but we also have a B designation locally. We have a non-nationally bound team. I don't know if those guys should be checking. Our local in-house non-nationally bound team, I think Doug's comment was spot on. Those guys aren't the best skaters, and they could potentially get themselves into trouble. So.
Paul, John, Matt, what do you guys think? Doug?
I don't mind that number 5, and maybe are you to do it if you're taking checking out. What about doing it in a progression? First year, do that. Second year, possibly take it out completely. Is that something that you could work towards?
Explain that.
Well, if you're, let's say we removed body check, is it possible that USA Hockey could remove body checking from, like Jody was saying, A and below or something, and leave it in at the higher levels, at the better levels, and then somehow, do a progression each year? Or is it better to just take it away all at once or leave it in?
I see what you're saying. No, the proposal there is just remove it from everything except 14U Tier 1 and up, and Tier 2. But you're thinking progression within 14 and then to 15. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
we have a bunch of teams declaring Tier 2 now that shouldn't be Tier 2, just to get into that.
Right.
And I think it should be, I think you need to look at the recommendations of the CDC and let the CDC guide that a little bit. And if the CDC is saying anything 15 and under, so 14 years old, 13 and below, obviously checking is out. I think obviously you continue to push body contact. Kids get to be in the midget level. That's where coaches really start to teach proper body checking, and that becomes part of the game. I think you're going to, if you've got some kids that are playing high school hockey, maybe they can't afford to play AAA, but maybe they're a AAA player that can make that transition. Are we hindering their development where they're not learning the checking aspect of the game, where their counterparts playing AAA are? I think to kind of make that designation of AAA versus AA versus rec becomes you're muddying the waters. And is it a legit AAA? Is it a legit AA? And we could all make arguments about the number of those teams in the country anyway. So I think, again, I look at it as it comes down to defining what checking means, what body contact means, and you follow the CDC guidelines to say, yeah, let's take out the checking at 14U and let's look at how we're teaching checking at 15 or 16U and 18U and junior 20U. At the end of the day, they're going to go play college hockey if these kids, whether it's ACHA or NCAA, and checking is going to be there. And so is USA Hockey going to try to convince ACHA and the NCAA to remove body checking, or so you're starting to get into some developmental problems, in my opinion.
Yeah, I like you said though earlier, Sean. Just because you're a AAA player at 14, it doesn't mean you deserve to get your brain smashed in.
No doubt. I mean, I think that, and I think again, when you look at the AAA, the 14 AAA, and you look at who's playing AAA, you go to a AAA tryout. Well, the reality is it's biologically early developing kids that are more intimidating on the ice that are playing for those teams. And the younger kids, the smaller kids, the late developing kids are relegated to AA, and you hope they're still in the game, at 15, 16, 17 years old. So I think eliminating that at 14U and letting these kids sort of catch up with their growth, having body contact allowed, teaching it correctly, and then when these kids get a little bit older, then the onus is on the organizations and the coaches to teach checking correctly.
Yeah, I agree. Like, what's the point of having checking at the 14 level? Like, why does it matter? Like, why do you need it there? It's not helping their development, right? Like, what's the point? Like, once you hit the higher level, 16, 18 AAAs, maybe, but I don't get it at the 14 level.
Okay, last comment, then we're going to change the subject. You guys are all a bunch of softies. You're ruining the game. My kid, if you would teach full body checking in 10U and 8U, they would be ready then to check 14U, and you guys are way off base. What do you guys say to that?
They'd have more concussions.
Oh, look, you're running a concussion training run by the CDC. You're asking all these coaches to become certified by the CDC in concussion awareness training, but yet you're not following their guidelines. So you're speaking out of both sides of your mouth. You want us to follow the CDC guidelines, but your rules don't follow the CDC guidelines. And I think you can make the same argument for football. I go watch 9 and 10-year-old football players here in Aspen, banging each other in the heads. I mean, it's full contact, full tackle football, and kids are getting concussions, and I'm sitting back shaking my head saying, are you shitting me? Like, really? These kids need to learn that kind of contact at that age? It makes no sense.
Yeah.
Sean, you can argue the same thing with lacrosse. I mean, lacrosse is here.
100%.
The 10s and the 12s in lacrosse they're more physical than our hockey clubs.
Absolutely. I agree. But I think if USA Hockey is going to be, I think they've been the leader in youth sports, I think, in everything they've done, from the ADM to just how active the national governing body is. I'd love to see the hockey just take the lead and say, let's do what's right. And maybe USA football and maybe USA lacrosse will follow, will continue to follow as they've done. I mean, and I think they're behind the times, but I would just love to see us take the lead. And I think Hockey Canada would be right there, arm in arm with USA Hockey.
Parts of Hockey Canada there. I tell you what, Quebec's really leading a strong push, and they're kind of the leaders right now in Canada. They're doing a really good job. Any more thoughts on that?
I think sometimes you also have to make it known to people how fast the game's getting and how it's changing, and you throw that big blow-up hit and you're out of the play yourself. If you want to make it to the highest level, you have to have hands now. There's no fourth line. So as you start to educate parents and players, you have to be able to move. You have to be able to play. You need hands. You have to possess the puck. You're not getting a spot on an elite team because you could throw a check.
Good point. Hey guys, this was great discussion. I mean, outstanding. I am going to share some of your guys' thoughts with the Youth Council, because I think, to me, my biggest takeaway without overanalyzing each individual's comments was, let's smarten up. Let's do what's right for kids. And checking's almost outdated and not a big piece of our game, especially when developing youth hockey players. And Paul, I really appreciate your passion on the whole thing. I mean,
Thanks.
you know, and just get rid of it, because there's so many guys out there that are, you know, stuck in that male hegemonic, you know, mindset. And you guys are really intelligent guys. You guys live this every day. For those comments to be so easy for you guys to see, it's pretty impressive. Any final thoughts on body contact before you switch gears? Blade, anything?
Joe, I think, yeah, it was interesting to hear that everyone was really on board with removing it. I think it just shows you where we're at in the game and how good the game is, and the speed and the skill. And I think the key, if this is going to happen down the road, is really embracing what the game is, of the speed, the skill, and the physical contact. That's part of the game. It just doesn't mean the game turns soft. I think you embrace how physical the game can be in a smart way. Let's do the right thing and be smart about it.
Love it.